Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You're joined by a fairly full house, a crowded house. Again, I keep saying that joke, and it's for Australians, and we haven't got any Australians here, have we? Anyway.
Crowded house is a New Zealand group.
Oh, well, I was right then. I was right, but I was
What
wrong.
an insult.
Oh, yeah. That's why I said it. Oh, never. Oh, that all went horribly wrong. You see, try to be clever, and it doesn't work at all, does it? Joined by Louis, Bruce, Rich Hanson from the AMA, and Vu and Grayson from here, from these people. Hi guys, how are we all doing?
Great, happy to be here.
Good stuff.
I'm doing well.
Good show. Rich, we're gonna come to you first. You wrote a piece in The Hill, and it was entitled "Punish Rogue Recreational Drone Pilots, Not the Rule Followers," which seems quite straightforward to me. But why did you feel you had to write that?
Well, first of all, let me apologize for not having a video feed. Don't have much bandwidth here, so I thought I'd turn that off. But this was actually a piece that was in response to another feature article that appeared in The Hill. I don't know if you saw that or not, where CDA actually called for the repeal of 336. And we're finding that in a lot of the media pieces that go out, even some of the op-ed pieces that go out, people are equating 336 to sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card. I know it's been referred to as having a loophole that allows recreational flyers to fly unsupervised, unfettered. And unfortunately, they get blamed for some of the mishaps that have happened, and I believe unfairly. So our piece was really a response to those types of articles.
And how well received was it? Do you think the you probably can't answer entirely because there'll be things you're not allowed to say, but do you think the FAA is moving towards the AMA's position and view on how the world should work?
Well, I don't know as far as the FAA moving it. You know, as far as when 336 came out in 2012, I believe FAA was kind of slow to embrace it. We weren't able to get them to sit down and talk to us about 336 until September of 2012, which was some 6 or 8 months later. And even today, they have drawn the opinion that they don't have the ability to designate or to identify who qualifies as a CBO, or at least who's even operating as a CBO. And I believe this has caused a lot of the ambiguity and confusion that's out there, as people just don't know what are the appropriate rules to follow and how you're supposed to follow those rules. And then there is, unfortunately, a segment of people that don't want any rules or don't feel the rules are necessary. I think the one thing you can say about the FAA is I think the FAA is very comfortable with the work that AMA has done for the last 82 years in terms of managing its community. We obviously have a very, very good safety record. We have a very strong safety program, and our members, for the most part, are dedicated to that program and follow the rules. There's a whole new group of UAS users out there that are not necessarily aligned with the AMA, what you would call traditional model aircraft enthusiasts. And that is the community that we've been trying to reach out to and embrace and to envelop into our community, or at least bring them into some form of safety culture.
And I suppose just before we started, Bruce mentioned was it Tower Hobbies? Who was it that's gone? Who was it?
Hobbyco.
Hobbyco. Sorry, yeah.
Well, Hobbyco is Tower. You know, Hobby had a lot of subsidiaries. That's Hobbyco, Great Plains, Tower.
Yeah.
One other. But my understanding is their bankruptcy was for the entire organization.
Shame. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I can't think. that any of us wouldn't have had at least one of their products, or a bit, or a knife, or a saw, or something. You know, I think that everybody's had something from them, which is amazing. And where I was taking that, and where I was going to mention that was, I'm seeing a lot of people saying the hobby's in decline, and I'm trapping you here. I didn't say we could talk about this before, but do you think is that your impression, Rich? I am of the viewpoint that a lot of these new entrants in the drone world, yes, a lot of them only want to take a picture from the air. I know that's a lot of people's argument, but I'm sure a lot of them would like to. This is a gateway drug to some extent to the AMA.
Well, there's no doubt that the multi-rotor quote drone, however you identify that or define that, community is growing and has a large following. The traditional model aircraft hobby, however, arguably is in decline, at least on the industry side. We just finished up a project that we started last summer where we're trying to identify the state of the industry. In fact, that's the name of the report. And we interviewed some 20-some different U.S. hobby industry participants, everything from retail hobby shops to cottage manufacturers to distributors and online product developers. And we're going to be releasing that report here in about 2 weeks. Matter of fact, we would have already released it just after the first year, but when HobbyCo filed bankruptcy, we're adding a whole new chapter to that report as to what happened with them. And though HobbyCo certainly has some financial problems that go beyond what's happening in the industry, we think that what we're seeing is sort of the tipping point. And that tipping point, and what I believe is, and this even impacts the drone community that you're talking about, is sort of the villainization of this activity. There's an awful lot of talk about the bad actors and the potential of incidents between manned aircraft and UAS. The idea that things as small as a half a pound now have to be registered with the federal government. The talk of adding ID and tracking to that same community of aircraft. So Part 107, that it doesn't allow anyone under the age of 16 to operate the aircraft unless they're with another licensed pilot. This whole thing is creating a barrier, we believe, into entry into the hobby, both from the adult side, but more importantly from the youth side.
Can I ask you a question? That 16-year rule isn't only applied when you're using your model outside the AMA approved fields?
No, there is no age limit for operating a model airplane under 336 or under AMA's rules. The 16-year-old limitation is only in Part 107.
Okay.
But you got to remember, Part 107 is not, a lot of people characterize Part 107 as a rule for commercial pilots. It's really not. As a matter of fact, if you read the rule, you will not see the word commercial in the rule. And 107.12 actually requires anybody that wants to manipulate the controls of a UAS to have a remote pilot certificate, whether you're flying recreationally, for business purposes, or commercially. So anyhow, getting back to the report, you know, we felt that a lot of this uncertainty in the regulatory arena, the somewhat villainization of the hobby, has had an impact on new entrants into the hobby, and that's what we were trying to find out or validate through this report. And pretty much that's the findings we have. There are other reasons the hobby is diminishing, and that is just evolution. You know, people's interests change, and a lot of the new interest is in this new drone arena. But it also has become a barrier to entry as well.
Okay, but this happens all over the world. Model aircraft was always a niche activity, which was expensive, time-consuming, and would require a new user to get himself as a member of a club, and only operating his model within the confines of the flying fields. What happens to the RC crowds is that the ease that you can get a fully built module from China has made that hobby part as much as use and consume or ready to fly cheaply, and has expanded greatly the hobby beyond what's happened, and that has effect also on the traditional vendors, the local vendors that would support the hobby with training and all that. That's a different topic, because I'll take that outside of the drone community, because the drone community, what has brought to the playing field is the ability of operating a kind of RC model that can operate anywhere. And for instance, you cannot go and fly a 2-meter sailplane anywhere. You just can't. It's impossible to operate, while a small drone can be operated anywhere. And I believe that the RC people are still exempt of most of the crazy regulations that are being put in place all around the world. And what is going to be affected is the easy-to-use, ready-to-consume drones that are being put out by China at your doorstep.
Yeah, I would agree that this new technology certainly adds that aspect that you can fly it in many places that you wouldn't fly a traditional aircraft. Not that you couldn't fly it, but you just wouldn't, because you wouldn't fly it in that environment. Unfortunately, it also brings with it the mindset that you're allowed to fly anywhere, and that is very much untrue. And where we're finding people flying in airspace that's already around airports and around heavy metropolitan areas, these are the ones that are unfortunately causing problems and putting a little bit of a jaded view on the hobby itself. The hobby being the greater hobby of everything aeromodeling.
Yeah, but I think we always tend to mix up, for instance, what Bruce has done recently, building himself a model from scratch materials and operating that model within a properly recognized flying field, and the kid that picks up a Phantom from the shelves of any store, or gets it delivered from China and operates it on the parking lot of a big retail store. I don't think that the hobby, the RC hobby in itself is in danger. What is in danger is the casual usage of drones anywhere.
But how would a regulator know the difference? They can't say, well, of course, they'd never say Bruce is all right, he can do what he's like. Obviously, that would go against the grain. But how could a regulator couldn't? The regulation could be one size fit all.
The problem, Gary, the problem of the people using drones is that they want to have a camera and they want to get some nice pictures or nice videos. And that doesn't happen if you are limited to operate on a flying field. Period. That's it. You want to go to a beach or to some countryside. People that would fly RC models would never go fly to those places. They would go and operate their models within the confines of the model of the flying field. The big difference is the FPV, the cameras, the recording, and people don't want to see the same flying field all over again. And I'm not even starting to include the professional users. That's a completely different story. I'm only speaking on recreational users.
But then
the big problem are the cameras that people are putting on board the models.
Okay, so we know that Bruce defines, quote unquote, the hated word drone as something with a GPS. You're gonna, we can add. So then, can we add the word camera to that and say anything with a GPS and a camera? Then that's what the regulators should be looking out for, and those are the people that need different rules to everybody else.
No, it's easy. If you want to be a logic regulator, you can just say anyone that flies outside an AMA or Model Aircraft Association of your country, you're in breach unless you have a commercial license to operate, period.
Yeah, well, that's no good for my lad. We are the nearest South African field is 80 kilometers from here. I'm not going to drive 80 kilometers every time. And I've got a field. I own a field. I'm not going to.
I know. The same with me. I have to drive 80 or 60 kilometers to go to RC model flying fields. That's the same. So we used to call the RC users that would fly outside the flying fields the pirates.
I need to find my hat then. Yeah. I need to find my hat.
But you've got to remember that. You must remember that there's been a whole section of the model flying community for years that have flown their little Cox control line planes in parks and flown their little gliders in parks. Flying outside of AMA fields or approved fields has been a part of the hobby. I used to fly my planes in the local schoolyard when I was a kid. So we can't just automatically say if you're not flying at a field, you're flying a drone. And
but
so
Bruce,
I don't think
that was not approved, right? It was forbidden by the rules.
No, it was allowed. Virtually, I think in America.
Allowed?
Yeah, not in this. In this country, it's allowed. There's nothing that says that model aircraft have to fly in an established flying field. And I'll tell you that within our community, only about 60%, because we've done some surveys of, I remember, only about 60% fly at a local club flying field. Others fly on their own backyard. They have their own 40 acres that they fly off of. They fly at schoolyards. They fly at parks at the end of the street. They even go out and find their own safe place to fly in an open piece of land. So now, in this country anyhow, not all air modeling activity, traditional model aircraft air modeling activity, occurs at the local club or at a flying field. A lot of it occurs at other locations. Now, it may not be the parking lot of the retail store that you talked about, and it may not be a beach full of crowded people. But I will tell you, out in California, we have several beaches where they do slopes soaring off of the slopes adjacent to the beach, where they get a good amount of wind coming off the water.
But if the law or any agent of the law wants to forbid that, he can, right?
Well, usually, yeah. If there are areas where communities have said that model airplanes can or can't fly. So we do have places where model aircraft are not permitted, but those are the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you put the camera on a vehicle, it changes the perspective of whoever is trying to enforce new rules. I believe that's one of the biggest issues we have with all this drone kerfuffle, is the cameras on the drones.
But that's not necessarily so, Louis. There's two aspects. There's the phantom photographic, they want to get good shots of things. And then there's the FPV community. Now, I fly FPV at a field, and I fly here all the time. I don't get bored flying at the same field with FPV, because FPV isn't about exploring new places, or for me, about exploring new places and flying. It's about a pilot's perspective, a pilot's seat perspective of flying. It adds a whole new dimension, but I can still fly that quite comfortably. And I think the big problem we've got is not one of anything other than perception. And it boils down to, as I've said so many times before, the regulators are too lazy or incapable of differentiating between a traditional model aircraft and a Phantom 4. And they need to do that for the fairness of all concerned, because the hobby hasn't changed very much. And we're still flying models with a long heritage of safety and responsibility. We're still doing the same thing. It's the newcomers with their camera drones that are causing the problem. So the regulators, the first thing is define your problem. The problem isn't the traditional community of model flyers, it is the new community of drone flyers. So why are you lumping them all together and penalizing them? We must go to the regulators and say, look, this is the first thing you've got to do. Forget about these rules until you know your problem. You cannot control it by any amount of rule without penalizing someone unfairly. I think the AMA should be very strongly working with the FAA to say, you got to draw a line. And 3336, they effectively do, because under the CBO arrangement, if you're working under a CBO, you are a model flyer. But in other countries, there's not necessarily the same division, and that's where I think the whole thing's falling apart. But even the AMA should be doing a lot of PR work, because ultimately regulators and politicians all work, they're swayed by public opinion. And the media has biased public opinion so strongly against anybody who flies anything that is not manned, that we have a hard time dealing with the public. The public will think we're spying on them and we're a danger to them, and we know better. So I think the role of organisations like the AMA is to go out there and counter that. Every time there is a drone story that says, oh, you know, a drone was seen spying on somebody, the AMA needs to come back and say, you know, have a counterpoint, balance it up so that the papers will lap it up, because that gives them more column inches, more space for advertising.
Bruce,
you have to be really proactive on this.
Reality sometimes has some artifacts, and I'm sure you've seen the Russian minister presenting the drones that they caught that were apprehended while attacking one of their bases in Syria. And that's the news.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
No, it's not funny at all. It's not funny at all, because it's using something that could be done 40 years ago, and you know that as well as I do, could be used 40 years ago, and perhaps was, but now with much more accuracy, just getting components off the shelf. So, and those are the news that the regulators are watching. Those are the kinds of things that the regulators are being fed, and they want to prevent that. That they won't prevent anything. We all know that, because whoever wants to do some harm will do it regardless. It's kind
but
of,
the thing with that,
I call it the Toyota pickup syndrome.
Yeah, that's right. They should be. Why wasn't the hobby coming out and saying, yes, these were drones misused for this purpose, but there have been far more people killed by Toyota Utes with anti-aircraft guns on the back. So why aren't we so concerned about selling Toyota Utes and people using Toyota utility vehicles? We've got to come back with a comeback. Every time there's negative press, we're going to come back with the positive side and balance it. Otherwise, the media just runs away. And
Bruce?
Us as a community and the people who represent our community, like the AMA and I do it.
You have an audience. You have an audience. You,
exactly.
Joshua Bardwell, and all those guys. That
my audience, though, I'm preaching to the converted. We need more mainstream. We need press releases to the mainstream media to counter. I've already done a lot of work here. Every time there's a drone story that says, oh, you know, a drone was seen spying on somebody at a beach, and I write a reply saying, there is no expectation of privacy at a public beach. So what is the problem? How many people had cell phones at that beach with cameras? Why are we picking on drone flies? Drone flies have better things to do than spy on people. And so keeping this going means that every time there is a bad news story, there is a balanced perspective, and it's a responsibility we have to take very seriously. If we don't, the media will kill us.
I know.
Yeah, you know, well, guys, I can tell you, AMA does that. We've actually hired a communication firm that does just that. They monitor all of these press releases regarding drones, and wherever we have situations where they're blaming the drone community on something, we push back with some type of op-ed piece or our own press release to counter that. The problem is the media doesn't pick up on it. The media sells, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. The story about a drone spying on somebody is something that they can sell, and it becomes attractive to the media. Are going out there and saying, yeah, but the vast majority of the model airplane people fly responsibly, and that drones by and large have some very positive applications, that doesn't sell. So we don't get as much play on our pushback, but I will tell you, we push back on every article we can find.
I think, Rich, you've got to really work hard with the pushback. You can't just go with a boring, bland piece of this isn't right. You got to produce something that you know they'll want to print. For example, do a video piece or something showing this is what a pilot of a drone sees, and demonstrate how the image they see is not high zoom and super powerful cameras. It's a wide angle view, and people look like ants, and something that they can use and attract eyeballs. So you've got to think when you're doing your counterpiece, what, if I was a newspaper editor, would I want to publish, and what would attract people to my newspaper or my TV station, and sell them that. Give them something that makes their job so easy. They don't have to do anything except put a byline on it and publish it. And that's what you do. If you do a boring press release, it gets filed in the round bin. No one's interested because it's just, yeah, I've heard it all before. So you've got to sell. This is a game of salesmanship. The media are selling the wrong perspective. We've got to sell and work really hard to sell, which means sizzle it up, you know, sensationalize it if you have to, use some clickbait if you need to, but we've got to fight fire with fire. And they're using clickbait headlines and all that sort of stuff. We have to do the same thing. It's just unfortunate, but true.
And we've also, as a community, we have got to try and fly responsibly and try and point people that we might find not doing the right thing to do the right thing. Being asked in the questions, Rich, what do you think about of remote ID tracking, the remote ID ARC?
Well, we sat on that ARC, and it's just like registration. We believe that remote ID and tracking makes sense at some level, the same way registration made sense at some level. The challenge becomes setting that threshold. Now, I'll tell you that we disagreed wholeheartedly that with the registration threshold being anything a half a pound or more, we felt that reached way too far into the toy market. As far as the ID and tracking, our recommendation was that the only thing that really needs to ID and track are those devices that have the capability of going beyond visual line of sight. In our opinion, that if you've got an RC device that's flying within visual line of sight, if you find the device, you find the guy, because he's the guy standing at the edge of the field with the transmitter in his hand. But when you have a device that has the capability of self-navigation and can travel beyond visual line of sight, or if you have an FPV vehicle where the pilot can navigate virtually beyond visual line of sight, that's where ID and tracking starts making sense.
And do you get a sense of who will be the gatekeeper for this system? Because isn't that what most of this rush is about? It's about being the person with the keys, handing over the data to the FAA and making a little bit of money on the side of that.
Well, the ARC that dealt with this was pretty clear that FAA would be the ones that would keep and retain any type of PII, personally identifiable information. Third parties that deal with tracking information about where a device has been and what it was doing, but they also were pretty clear about who would have access to even third-party data. But I think by and large, they're expecting FAA to be the gatekeepers, as you called it.
Okay, well that's at least reassuring to know. And they've also got a vast amount, more than 1 million people's data now because of the registration. I think that's what they're touting now, aren't they? More than 1 million people have registered with them.
Yeah, I saw that come out today, and that is an unfortunate circumstances where everything that's over a half pound got registered in some form or fashion, and people did it in good faith and conscious because they were told they have to. So what we do is we have, I would say at least half of those things were what we would call toys or novelty devices, things that have a very short lifespan, very little capability, and the operator has minimal interest in it. So I would say that well over half of those 1 million devices have either been destroyed, discarded, or become disinterested, and they no longer fly. So now we have a database that really is meaningless, other than it gives the FAA the ability to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's sort of, you wonder how many devices make it to New Year's Day after Christmas, don't you? Really, it's yeah. and well, I can remember I had a model. I can remember a model airplane I had that I don't think made it. I was about 7, given it. I had to make it on Christmas Day. It was blowing a gale, and of course, it disappeared off into a tree. You know, and there must be hundreds of examples of that. And there was only 45 at the time. It's
I don't know if you saw the article, but the New York Times did an article just on that very thing about the number of drones that crash as soon as, within a short period of time that they're being put into use.
So it does make me wonder if the risk is really what people think it is. I don't know, Bruce, if you got any more questions to this thorny subject.
Yeah, I was just wondering, talking to Rich, most of the national model flying bodies around the world have a kind of a, not certification, well, in New Zealand it is because it's a certification recognised by our equivalent of the FAA. Like they have the wing system, there's gold wings, bronze wings, and all that sort of stuff. Wonder why the AMA doesn't do that, because that can give you quite some leverage with the aviation administrator, because if you can prove that your people have a certain level of competence and understanding, then you may be able to get extra privilege for them. Now, I know there's the 107 in the US and so forth, and we have an equivalent here, but that's quite a bit further down the track. I mean, here in New Zealand, if you can prove that you can fly a model safely, you know the basic rules, then you get a thing called wings, which enables you, in the case of New Zealand, to fly within 4 kilometres of an airfield, whereas all other people are excluded. So it's basically saying, you know what you're doing, so we're going to give you some extra privilege. Has the AMA thought of doing something like that?
We have. I know Australia does a similar program. In fact, you guys probably work together in developing that wings program. I think the MAAA's program is voluntary, that their members don't have to follow that, but there's a good incentive for them to do that. We've looked at that program, and currently the only thing that we certify or provide pilot credentials for is turbine flyers and what we call large model aircraft, anything over 55 pounds. And then we also have other categories of flyers, but that's not necessarily a credentialed level of competency. And we have looked at that. I don't know, maybe our community is a little less oriented towards regimentation. So our modelers haven't really been strongly interested in that. But I think it's got merit, and it certainly is something we haven't forgotten, and we still have sort of in our back pocket.
And what do you think about flight tests? Speaking of the whole PR thing, flight tests seem to have done amazing things for the hobby in the USA. Got a lot of new people in there and shown families having good, safe fun with model aircraft as opposed to people flying around with drones trying to spy on people. Is the AMA, I'm not sure of the relationship between flight tests and the AMA. If the AMA doesn't back flight tests, do they have similar programs themselves?
Oh no, we partner with flight tests. Actually, the flight test events are AMA sanctioned events, and you're right, they do a tremendous job. And the guys that are putting flight tests together are a real hoot. I very much appreciate what they're doing. So I would say that AMA and flight tests work hand in glove.
They're actually the perfect. Trust you to think of it, Bruce, but they are the perfect example of where you know that if you want to hold up an example of a positive, great, good news story in the industry, it's them. They are great. They really are great, and bringing lots of youngsters in through modern materials. Because I mean, I guess if you classify modelling as being balsa wood, then perhaps it is going by the wayside and that side. But that's very expensive. Foam, hot glue. What's it?
Hot glue. I believe Bruce didn't use hot glue. Did you use hot glue, Bruce?
He's got the special kicker.
I use hot glue, yeah, and with kicker, yeah.
Yeah, it's got the hot glue kicker. Yeah, so there are other ways. SPAD, simple plastic airplane designs. There are other ways of getting it in. And why for the real drone diehards? They're here watching this. Am I talking? Well, we're talking to Rich Hanson and we're talking about model aircraft. Well, it's the future of the industry, isn't it? It's the future of the exciting stuff. The boring stuff will be the push button ready to go, which we'll talk about to Vu and Grayson in a second, because they're from the boring world of getting it commercially done. So we'll talk the boring.
Do you want me to switch hats for the boring part?
I'm sure you've always got a boring hat, but yeah. When did you get sponsored? He's got a sponsorship deal.
No,
Bruce,
I've been sponsoring them.
Oh, you've been sponsoring them. Yes. So let's please stick around with us, Rich, and hopefully we'll get to chat again in a second. But let's move on because look at the time. We've had this 34 minutes of interesting chat just gone by like that. Boo. Grayson, you've got something to do, some mission planner thing for LiDAR. Why on earth do I need that? I've got mission planner anyway. I don't need your tool.
I think it's exactly what we've been talking about. And well, let's face it. You got a very expensive piece of equipment up in the air, then you run right into a tree, and we see it all too often. I mean, raise your hand if you guys are running into a tree. Drone. So it happened. And
no, the tree moved in the way. Sorry.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what happened.
I didn't run on it.
Yeah.
That's what my pilots tell me all the time. But flight planning is it's not just a tree. It's also a hill, a mountain, terrain, right?
No, they all move. They all move to the hats.
It seems everybody plans in 2 dimensions. Their flight planning, when I'm pretty sure the world's not flat. I don't know. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but that's essential for us as 3D flight planning. Now, granted, some of the 3D data that we have, the Earth is not as accurate, but it's a lot more accurate than 2D. And we use a lot of the space shuttle data that we got for 3D flight planning. But of course, the question that we always get with flight planning for photogrammetry and LiDAR is flight line spacing and overlap. So it's one of those questions that we all have to answer. And of course, this is the commercial side, and I can share. But just a quick overview is that the flight planning for LiDAR is a bit tricky because everybody's after point density. And I'll make this fast, but the goal eventually is to use a 3D flight planner. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yep. So
we not just have X and Y, but now we can actually follow terrain using, as I said, the space shuttle data that was acquired by NASA. And
that's the DEM 30 meters or lower?
Yeah, I think it's about 20 meters accurate. So it's still, there's still certain areas that, sure, we might be off a bit, but bottom line is flight planning is essential for any application, and to guide a user from beginning to end is essential to get the right product that you want. And so there's a lot of training that goes along with this, but there's so many variables when you combine photogrammetry and LiDAR together. So your altitude, your how fast you and often you trigger, but in the end, you're after, for example, so here is your ground sample distance. So what this flight planner allows you to generate is your GSD map. It allows you to generate your point density map. So this is for LiDAR. This is for point density gradient. It tells you in this region, because of the overlap, you have 441 points per square meter. So this is, I know it's a bit of a segue from what you guys are discussing, but in the end, it's all about flight safety and proper flight planning. So there is a parallel to what we've been discussing. But bottom line is that the user inputs their area of interest and can effectively map out what areas they want to cover, at what flight speed, at what scan speed, and determine, what.
I'm guessing this is just like we're all probably pretty aware of all the photogrammetry tools that are out there, most notably Pix4D, I suppose. This is just the LiDAR version of this. Then you put in, I've got this LiDAR, whatever it is, and it does the same. Can you, once you've surveyed this, so say that's a forest under there, and I'm going to go back again next week, can I use the LiDAR data in previous LiDAR data in following missions to make that terrain follow even more accurate?
Yes, you can. There's going to be some interesting products that we'll see in the near future using that LiDAR data for applications in the utility industry, for and mining, for example, in mining industry for inspections and whatnot. So there's a lot of byproducts, not just from the mapping data, but also for aerial automation, aerial inspection, because you know exactly where these certain areas of interest are from that LiDAR data.
Because as we're moving towards greater autonomy, people are going to need really accurate definitions of landing areas, and they're going to need to know hazards and things like that. So I can see that being really useful. So would you do a high level pass and then do a mission that's a relatively high level, and then be able to squeeze in and do all the crinkly bits afterwards with more accurate collision avoidance?
I think you're onto something there, Gary. I think you're onto something. Yes, absolutely. Geospatial, and see where there's this. The last year we've seen versions of flight. Well, we've been flying GPS for quite a few years now. But now we are seeing inexpensive DRTK drones, which we mentioned last time we talked. Now the precision is at 2 centimeter geospatial, location of that drone. You know exactly where it is. And from the professional level, that opens up a whole new world of, exactly where that UAV is, exactly what you want to cover. So it's very exciting, the byproducts that you're going to see from this level of accuracy and automation. So a lot of opportunity.
And I suppose the other thing that's going to create the opportunity is, and I'm not sure, I know you went to CES, so I don't know if you saw the guys, the Velodyne guys have sort of half the price of their LiDARs. Is this the beginning of price drop? I can't think of the right phrase, but more competitive prices for LiDAR.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the downward trend that we're all after. But nothing like seeing your inventory value drop by 50% on January 3rd. So.
Oh yeah, there's also that.
Let's just say I'm sure that they've instated some stock price protection program.
Happy New Year. But
what's the realistic? How low can you go? Where are these prices going to be? Are we going to?
I believe that they'll agree with me. The issue is not the Velodyne slashing the price in half of their puck LiDAR. I believe that has been done for a reason, and the reason is solid state LiDARs. And
okay,
people are not. Is with anything. It's economies of scale. They've now built their mega factory in San Jose, and they're using robotic, machines to build these sensors at a mass scale, and that's what we're all after.
We all know that that's not the 50% discount on the retail price. We all know that, right?
You think of the 50% reduction in prices, is it related to what?
I believe the most important thing is the upcoming new solid state LiDARs that will make the LiDARs easier.
Yeah. And I mean, the solid states that you see this year, I think, are like the first generation of the megapixel camera. We all had the 1 megapixel camera. They're very low resolution now. The next year we're going to see two megapixels and 3. So we are at the first generation of solid state, and of course, it makes the most sense for automotive. For us, it doesn't make as much sense at the stage that they are for mapping. But we all know for the automotive market, it has to be solid state. There's no way around.
I'm speaking for industrial inspections. I don't care about mapping. Mapping is for guys with blades. I just use the LiDARs for wind turbine inspections, and that's where professionally I'm involved. And those solid state LiDARs really make it very compelling to use.
Yeah, they're improving. But as far as most of them are 905 and make it very difficult. Granted, if you're not in the mapping market, then 905 nanometers is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the penetration still struggles at 905. But it's exciting at CES to see the new products that are coming out with flash LiDAR, solid state, you name it, and the improvement of the whole LiDAR package for autonomous vehicles. You see them all kind of come together. Although, yes, they are a bit hideous when you see them on the vehicle, but I think they're improving and miniaturizing them all together.
Yeah, and you know better than me, because I'm not a manufacturer of LiDAR system. I'm just a consumer of LiDAR systems. That a big part of the cost comes from having all those moving parts rotating, and this is a big one of the big engineering challenges that people have. And if you can remove that from the equation, will make the costs coming down. I'm just looking at it from an engineering perspective.
Of course, yeah. We all know for vehicles, moving parts fail, and I think that's the general trend that you saw at CES on the LiDAR side. I mean, on the virtual reality side, incredible.
You're unfortunately, it's like all of us suffer if we go to an event like you wear your AV hat, your model airplane hat, your LiDAR hat, so your view is a little bit skewed. But do you think there was a little bit more buzz about LiDAR from the general public, as it were, that were there? Did people know what LiDAR is, and all that sort of thing? Or was it, gee whiz, that's amazing? Or is it becoming more accepted? I suppose that's what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if the general public still understands LiDAR. I think they've heard the term. I don't think everybody flocked at CES to LiDAR booths like they did Samsung virtual reality. There's no doubt about that. That was incredible. How many people were in that Samsung VR booth? But you definitely saw a lot of the automotive guys, a lot of highlights upon the sensor package that they had in their autonomous vehicle. And so they have the whole structure of autonomous. I think it's called L1 through L5. So L5 being completely autonomous. And you saw a lot of vehicles there that were L5 level. Yeah, I mean, the regulation, we're talking about regulation on the UAV side. The regulation on the autonomous vehicle side is a huge topic as well, from what I understand. But a lot of exciting technology at CES. But as far as bring things back around from our side, flight planning is an essential part of delivering a good product, as you guys know, on the commercial side. And so the flight planner is just a segue into processing and then into a delivered product. So we put this as a test sample for you guys. We posted it on YouTube, and it's live for those that want to test the flight planner and play around with photogrammetry and LiDAR. But for more information, you can always go to phoenixlidar.com.
We can plan a mission there and send it to a vehicle, or
exactly. So you can plan the mission, or you can download that trajectory KMZ, and we've used it with Liche.
Yeah, so Liche for DJI.
It's absolutely works great. So, and Liche actually imports the Z. A lot of the flight planners just import X and Y, but Liche imports X, Y, and Z.
So, and how about if I want to use that with Ardupilot? I just imported it.
Haven't tested, but
shame on you.
Shame on you. Shame. Shame.
It's all about testing, isn't it? Testing. But
it's easy.
Actually, the overall goal of the flight planner is really to give you a good idea of what flight line spacing, what height, and what you should expect. We've been very conservative with the LiDAR range too, because we only use it at 20% reflectivity. So that means that we're limiting the range. Because let's face it, in marketing wise, they always say, "Oh yeah, it's 1,000 meters," but that's in the lab. True reflectivity is 20% in the real world, and so your range may be 200 to 300 meters. So we're quite conservative when we design.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see that compatible with the new release of Ardupilot plane, and so I'm waiting to see you guys.
Well, we can.
Ardu community.
I'm sure we can get it put in there, Louis. It was because what I was just trying to be. We'll rant on about that again some other time, Louis. Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
We've launched a new version of Arduplane, and we don't support that LiDAR. Come on, it's a shame on us.
A KMZ is a KMZ. We output a KMZ. If you can input a KMZ into Ardu, then you should, just like Liche, you should be able to do it with Ardu. So it's just
that will do it, but then we want to read the data from the LiDAR.
But it has to accept the Z.
We accept everything. You just you name it, we'll accept it. It's open source. It's open source. You name it, we'll accept it.
And let me just run back to Phoenix. So you've got your flight planning. Oh no, there goes the dog. You got your flight planning stuff. But you also, last time we spoke, you had your product which was processing LiDAR data.
That's right.
How's that going for you?
And really, when you process data, it's only as good as the input, right? That's really it's the whole flow from beginning to the proper planning, proper execution, proper processing. Because our post-processing guys get always frustrated when they have to fix, a lot of the errors that occurred in the acquisition stage. And so this flows nicely right into LiDAR mill automation, and that's what we're all about, is to make it easier for everybody to process LiDAR and photogrammetry to get the most accurate model and product that they're after. So yeah, we're segueing. This segues right into LiDAR mill. We have already a terabyte of user data that people are uploading and processing in LiDAR mill, and so. Yeah, we're excited with the launch of it. We're still in beta mode, so for those that still want to get a free demo, then please log in. And we hope to launch, I'd say, another month and a half.
And all the time, I said this last time. When are Pix4D going to buy you out? Because all the time, I'm not understanding why.
Well, it's a different market. Pix4D is understandably.
Oh, okay.
They're interested in the photogrammetry side, and I think there's no silver bullet when it comes to mapping, as you guys all know. We have our niche, power lines, vegetation, slopes, or night flying. Yeah, we're in active. They're passive, but they're still a combination of the two. And I think that's another trend you're going to see for 2018 is these hybrid combination point clouds, dense image matching and LiDAR. So that'll be interesting to see. And who knows what's going to happen with machine learning and auto classification. Another exciting topic. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting, all the professional applications that spin off as a byproduct for these photogrammetry from LiDAR that we're going to see in the next year. But yeah, there's no doubt that regulation of it is important for all this. So it's just trouble is, if you watch us weekly, we rant on about generally the same things. It's just hopefully regulation doesn't skittle too many young players out of the way as they come, and not too many onerous regulations are made for no point at all at the end of the day. Are you getting a very nice demo from Matthew Gordon in the comments already? So obviously someone's already looking, so that's good. I'm gonna give Louis a chance to, and anyone else that saw it this week, but we can bring back Ardupilot. Everyone knows I'm a big Ardupilot fan, and say well done, Mission Planner and the Cube, because Boeing use you. That was amazing to see them in the Boeing heavy lifting vehicle using you.
Ardupilot has been used for several big companies, even some of Microsoft projects. Some of Microsoft projects regarding these have been known to use Ardupilot, and that's a bit of what we the way we develop the codes. And speaking on code development, there's a big, perhaps the biggest news in a long time from Ardupilot is the shift from the base operating system that we were using and sharing with other flight stacks, and going to a new real-time operating system, which allow us to be more nimble, more versatile, and more efficient in terms of running the codes. So the move to GBOS is perhaps our greatest achievement in a long time. It's just on his initial first steps, but Siddhartha and Tridge, as usual, have done an excellent job and implementing that on the most usual flight controllers, and bringing an even better option for the survival and the evolution, especially the evolution of Ardupilot on every new platform that comes around. It's very exciting, this move. The ease of adding new devices to the platform, for instance, like some Phoenix LiDAR systems that we would like to support on for the navigation and object avoidance of drones.
We already have the pilot. So it's a lot of our customers that have the aircraft already use Ardupilot, use their mission. Yeah. The mission planner is fantastic. I think the software is excellent.
Yeah, the thing is, we can use these kinds of advanced systems easily, and even having new systems, it has become easier with this new port that has reached his master on the code base. It's a great addition for Ardupilot. We're all very excited with this, and let's see how it develops for now.
I think you should qualify that by saying the people that don't get out enough are very excited about it. But no,
no. There's a newer thing that I won't comment yet because we've hardly discussed this, that will make you very happy, Gary, when you know about it.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
So let's keep it. It's not a secret. As you know, as an open source project, we have our discussions publicly. Anyone is invited. You too, Gary. But for now, it's just on the initial stages of how should we do it. But we'll have a very large impact on air autonomous, Gary.
Hey, nice one. Thank you. Yes, I've opened up my virtual airline. It's going very well. Not, but where do I want to go next? Oh, I know. Look at the time. That's where I want to go next. I would better say, does anyone else have anything else that's caught their eye in the news this week?
Yes, I believe the drone challenge from Japan to the USA, and this will be, Rich will probably know a bit about the history of this, because didn't Maynard Hill fly the Atlantic way back in, was it the 60s or 70s? And I imagine it was so much easier to do it then, actually, just because now the biggest problem this drone challenge is going to face is the regulatory restrictions on autonomous beyond visual line of sight flying for non-military purposes.
In Japan, they also have some strange regulations about radio power and transmissions.
Yeah, but that won't matter if it's autonomous.
No, I don't know if there's telemetry.
Oh, well, I think we could. That's the Pacific Drone Challenge, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. But once it's outside of Japan, it doesn't matter, Louis, because the telemetry transmitter will be on the craft. Once it reaches international waters, Japan doesn't have any say.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. But I believe we have two. I believe the biggest announcement, and also has severe implications with regulations, is the new announcement from DJI, the $99 drone.
Why?
Why? Because it's $99. Because it's $99. So every Joe Sixpack and his dog can buy one. So.
but why is that, mate? Why just be? But I believe it's quite a pretty short range. It's a Wi-Fi device, isn't it? But it's full of smarts.
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting thing. They've managed to squeeze inside that small drone that Movidius shipped from Intel, and that's where the LiDAR guys know that. That's one of the challenges that conventional LiDAR systems have to face, is the pure vision systems, and that Movidius gives a big boost to that.
But is that not just showing the brave new world that we're moving into, where smaller devices, a $99 device, is really clever, and what do I want to tell that? I want to say that the 250 grand limit that's been kicking around all around the world, it begins to make less and less sense as a sub 200, because I think that thing's only 90 grams, isn't it?
Like yeah, 90 grams, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean,
and 12 minutes of flight time.
There's a whole 160 more grams to add there, or 159 grams to add. I mean, that's
no, it's 160 grams more possibilities of flyaways and flying on airport pathways and all that. So now we'll see a swarm of 90 grams drones flying on airport approaches and vicinities.
But again, I think you could come back to the Christmas, New Year, how long do they last argument. If you take that thing out, regardless of how smart it is, I bet it doesn't fly very well against a 20-knot wind in the rain. So it won't last long.
The problem is they'll fly, but as an experienced balloonist as you are, they'll blow with the winds.
Yeah, but you're kind of mitigating that risk in two factors. A little way is you've only got 12 minutes of flight time, so it's got 12 minutes to hit a tree, a house, or the airliner, and then when it does hit that thing, it's not very heavy anyway. I'm surprised Bruce isn't chipping in on this. I'm really surprised he's not chipping on this.
Bruce, well, yeah, I mean, let's face it, but the sub 250 doesn't exempt it from regulation. It only exempts it from registration.
Registration,
so the same rules still apply. Yeah. So the same rules still apply. So what's the big deal? I mean, it's just that, as we've already said, these things will disappear into the back of the wardrobe after a short period of time. And there are already a lot of quite capable drones that are probably more of a risk because they don't have GPS and they have longer flight distances. I have one here somewhere. I probably lost it, but here we go. I mean, this thing, I can fly this thing here, which is a $99 drone. I can fly this up to 1 kilometer away. And it'll go much higher than the DJI product. And it has no GPS, so I'm more likely to get it lost in the wind. So this is more of a threat than the DJI product. So I don't see the product from DJI being a risk as such. It just means it's going to be more people using it.
The problem is that we have to look at the distribution channels that DJI has, and most of those manufacturers don't. Because as soon as they launch it, we'll see them at every supermarket and every gas station. As we see today.
But you already see SEMA 20s and things at every supermarket and gas station anyway. These little drones are already everywhere. The DJI product is probably less likely to be an issue because it at $99, it is more expensive than some of the cheaper products. So people are going to say, you know, do I buy a $20 drone for the kids because I know it's going to get wrecked, or do I waste $100 on a drone for the kids? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a big difference. I don't think it'll be. I said last week it's going to be a game changer, but on reflection, I don't think it is. I think it's just another drone.
Yeah,
but wouldn't it be nice if when you open the box, you had some sort of experience that walked you nicely into the hands of the AMA, BMFA, Australian Modelling, New Zealand Model Association, or whatever, and tried at least, maybe even if only 1 in 100 people picked it up, that would be a lot more members for these associations and somebody inducted into a safe way of doing business. Isn't that the missing link? I know Bruce is the missing link in New Zealand, but that's
the missing link is that for most of these people, these organizations like the AMA, they don't offer anything. There's nothing there because there's a membership fee involved. And what are they going to get for the membership fee? Well, they're not going to use AMA fields. They probably have household insurance. They don't care too much about insurance. And for a 99 gram thing, is insurance really an issue? There's no return. There has to be a value exchange. You're going to give them money. What are you going to get? Well, that's why I tend to think that Rich should look more at this wings thing, because one of the things that we've got going for us here in New Zealand and in Australia is that if you join one of these organizations and you prove your capability and your responsibility, you get your wings, and that is something that is of value to you, because then it gives you extra ability to do things under the regulatory framework. So there's a bonus, there's a benefit to everybody in joining these organizations, because suddenly they can fly within 4 kilometers of an airfield and they can do things that the average guy who's not a member can't do. So the organizations have to sell themselves by producing some benefit. You can't just say, oh, we're a model organization, join us, because they'll go, nah, not interested. And that's what's generally happened. We've got all these drone flyers operating outside the framework of the community-based organization. So you've got to give them something to come back. I think AMA had trouble with that with park flights, but they brought out the park pilot program. I don't know if that's still going, but they realized that, you know, they had to reduce the prices because they weren't giving a park flyer as much as someone who used an AMA field. And you've got to scale your offering. I mean, as I said before, it's all about selling. You've got to sell your stuff to, you've got to sell yourself to them. You can't just say, we're here, come and see us. You've got to say, this is why you need us. These are the benefits. And it is, everything in the world today is down to salesmanship. And the hobby is the same.
Fair point.
Well, this Rich, the only thing I'll say is I'm taking notes, Bruce. I appreciate. I think he makes some very good points. I'm not sure what this $99 drone will bring. The only thing I would add to it is most people that buy the $99 drone, that buy the $500 Spark that DJI offers, is they're not even aware of that AMA exists or that there are even any rules for operating the device they're operating. The biggest example was the New York incident where the guy hit the Black Hawk with the Phantom. He was 2.5 kilometers from himself, so he was flying FPV, and he had no idea. He was clueless that there were any rules in place.
I'm sorry, Richard. Do you believe that?
Well, I believe that's what the NTSB published.
Yeah, but a guy that has 3 drones at home and he's flying the drones from where he shouldn't. Sorry. Sometimes the best defense is to play dumb, and I think that's a part of that excuse of that operator.
Well, you may be right. I'm not going to say, Louis, that becomes your opinion more than anything else. Whether this guy was telling the truth or not, but certainly that is the story he gave the NTSB, is that he had no idea that he was supposed to be operating within a set of rules. And it's even worse if he knew he was supposed to, because there was a TFR in place and he wasn't even allowed to be in the air at that point in time.
But hang on a minute, wasn't he registered? Wasn't he registered with the FAA? And didn't the FAA say the reason we want to register people is so we can educate them? So much for that.
I don't believe so, but I can't say for sure. My understanding is he was clueless. He had no idea about any of the UAS requirements. I
heard that he was aware of the 400-foot requirement, though, because he maintained an altitude less than 400 feet for most of his flight. But yeah, the trouble we have with this is that we don't know the full information. We get reports from the FAA and the NTSB, and under the official report, that drone was listed as a helicopter. Both craft were listed as helicopters because it seems they don't have anything in their system for drones as part of an incident report or a summary. So it shows you there's so much. I mean, we've got clueless people telling other people what to do and then investigating things. And the FAA, like most government organisations, is so far behind the 8 ball. They really need to be brought up to speed. And until they are, we all have to suffer with a sort of a rearward-looking mentality and an inability to cope with the rate of change that's taking place in a hobby like this.
Yeah, and the other thing for that incident, of course, was the TFR side of things have been switched off by DJI a couple of weeks before because it wasn't working very well. So the aviation data that the chap was relying on, i.e. the stuff he was seeing on his app, wasn't actually correct. There's many things to unpack with that, really, isn't there? Many things. Anyway, on those many things, at 9 minutes.
Wait. Many things. Then there's the other one that people we were discussing the other day, that we don't like quad planes, and then you get that Foxtech tilt rotor drone.
Yes,
tilt rotor plane. I don't. The only thing, and perhaps Bruce can help us out here. Okay, they have 3 rotors, and one of the rotor goes as a cargo when it's being used as a plane. Why didn't they also equip that as with a tilt mechanism and do the 2 pullers and 1 pusher?
Others have
I don't know. There may have been a weight, because being at the back, there's obviously a center of gravity implication if you add extra servos and mechanisms to provide a tilting capability. They may have found that there was no aerodynamic benefit. The parasitic drag was of less effect than the actual amount of thrust that they would have got by tilting it. I'm not aware of, I don't have a backdoor into their design things, but they're pretty clever guys. I'm pretty sure they would have looked at it and done some tests and come up with what worked best in the real world as opposed to the, the world of computer simulation.
Yeah, and you need your simulator board, Bruce.
Well,
I'll ask Jack or Fu from Foxtech. I might drop an email and just ask some questions about that.
Well, I think I liked his video because it was quite honest. I thought he said what he did, and he didn't, he didn't flower it up too much. So I thought that was quite a good sign myself. But there is one with the motor right on the top of the tail tilting as well, and I can't remember the name of it. That's a far more glidery sort of thing, but it does do exactly what you think, Louis. Tilts a whole lot, and then all three motors are part of the solution once it's moving forward. But yes, it's put the cat amongst the pigeons in the VTOL world. If you're going electric hybrid, and I reckon that's probably one of the better ones at the moment. And the price is some people are saying expensive. What's it, about $1,500, isn't it? Something like that. I thought that was an amazing price for the ready to fly one.
I believe so. I'm not so much on the pricing of those planes. I'm more in Bruce's club of do it yourself with some foam and stuff.
Polonium, yes. Those rare substances that they have in New Zealand. I'm surprised he's not using hobbit bones and stuff like that. But anyway, that's another thing altogether. All right, look, it's 12 minutes past. We've gone 12 minutes over the hour. So I still haven't got a gavel. I'm going to use this here orange handled screwdriver. Does anyone else have anything else? Going once, going twice, and we're out. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Rich, for joining us and telling us the current AMA position, a difficult path you have to trod at the moment. So thanks very much for taking the time to join us. Louis, thanks for moaning as ever. Boo and Grayson, thank you. Still wearing the shirt. And Bruce... Whatever, Bruce. Whatever. Cheers, man. Yeah. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Gary. Anytime you like, I'll come back.
Beautiful. Thanks very much. And dear viewer, thank you very much for being there as well. Don't forget to join us 2100 GMT every Tuesday, where we talk the same amount of nonsense every week, don't we, really? And I might release some videos this week. I don't know. Like, subscribe, do whatever else you're supposed to do on the YouTube, I don't know, whatever.
Gary,
yes.
Don't forget to join Air Autonomous.
Oh yes, people must join.
Come on, some marketing, man.
Marketing. Yes, I have started our virtual cargo delivery airline, and aircraft are available to fly if you want to fly them in simulation. And let's see if we can really make come up with some sensible ideas for how to do all of this. There's videos on the channel. Have a look on the channel. There's videos. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much. I'll see you all again. Cheers.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.